Welcome, welcome, welcome to your first, for most of you, your first Noyce Summit. We're so happy to have all of the new awardees here for the new awardee orientation. I'm Jennifer Ellis. I am the co-lead for the Robert Noyce Scholarship Program, and I'll be kicking off this orientation session, but have lots of friends who will be helping throughout the duration of this orientation session. Congratulations on being a recipient of the Noyce Award. And now what? You've got your award, now what do you do? So this session is going to give you some guidelines on what's next for you and your award and the implementation of it, and what we can do to help support you and to really welcome you to the Noyce community. First, wanted to make sure you were introduced to your Noyce program team or the Noyce directors. You'll also hear the term Noyce program officers used interchangeably. We are the same people. We're the program directors as well as your program officers. And this is our team here. Because of the COVID restrictions, many of us, or most of us, or all of us have on masks, so it's a little bit difficult. I could not see when I had my mask on and my glasses, so I had to take mine off. But as you can see, I have the team here. Kathleen Bergen, who is the lead, is in this corner. Mindy Capelti is here. Sue Carson is in her table in the back. My table is also in the back over there. Mike Fierro is not here yet. He'll be here later. This evening, Bonnie Green is here or on her way, and her table is over here. John Haddock is not here today. Tom Kim is here. His table is back there. Bob Mays is not here. And nor is Kimberly Tanner, but we will be covering their awards and their projects during this session as well. And we have a plan to make sure you get to meet a program officer if yours is not here for this session. So we're going to do some welcomes and introductions. So hopefully you're not sitting at a table of one. And there's at least one other person at your table so you can introduce yourselves to them. If you are at a table of one and you feel comfortable, at least shifting to another table so you can be introduced to someone other than yourself, that would be great. If you could do that at this time, that would be great. We'll do some welcomes and introductions. We'll do some nuts and bolts of the program and give you an overview of your responsibilities. Go over some of your responsibilities and some tips for budgets with the Division of Grants and Agreements. Discuss the Noyce annual survey for those of you who have tracks 1 through 3. Have some time for a quick meet and greet and a quick mentorship session with PI mentors who have been there, done that, and can give you some tips and tricks on how to be successful with your program. And then we'll allow time for you to meet your program officer or a program officer during the end if you want to introduce yourselves or ask some questions during that time as well. Okay, so I introduced you to the Noyce PIs. I want you to introduce yourselves to the Noyce PIs at your table. Say your name, your institution, the Noyce track, and if your project has an acronym, please share that acronym. Okay, hopefully you've had time to at least say hi. Now I want you, if you've had a chance to meet everybody, vote on who has the best acronym. All right, do we have any winners at any of these tables that somebody wants to yell out an acronym? WISE. WISE? Okay. Wildcat Initiative for STEM Education. We have another cool acronym. Well, why did you win the special prize? Congratulations, WISE. That's your special prize. Well, great. Well, now I wanted to make sure, again, that you felt comfortable and you met your fellow Noyce PIs during this session. There will be some of us talking to you, but we also want you to make your own community and network during this session as well. So the first thing we want you to do is to make sure you register your Noyce project. If you haven't done so already, make sure you go to nsfnoyce.org NSF.org to register your project and making sure you have all of that information loaded there and adding your information on that site. Some additional resources can be found here. The NSFnoyce.org is not just a place for you to add your project, but also to have some additional resources for you and your project team to reference. NSF.gov is always a place for you to come back to. There's regional conferences that we strongly encourage you to attend, Southeast, Northeast, Midwest, and Southern. Again, you're meeting your other Noyce PIs, so making sure if you have questions, don't feel that you have to go this alone. There is a community here to help support your needs, so make sure you reach out to your community within this group, as well as a larger Noyce community as well. Make sure you meet your Cognizant program officer, making sure you have those conversations with us, introduce yourselves. If you have questions about your project, feel free to contact us. And if you send an email and you don't get an immediate response, we are not offended if you say, hey, we sent you an email again, to get it higher up in our feed. But feel free to reach out to us and we will respond to you. And lastly, one of the ways that you can give back to the community is to serve as a reviewer. As you know, the Noyce deadline is in August, so we are going to be looking for reviewers. So if you have the time and the capacity and or know teaching fellows or teachers or your co-PIs or evaluator who can serve as a reviewer, please let us know. We would love to have them join the review panels. Some guidelines and some guidance for you as you go through this journey of being a Noyce PI. The PAPG is your friend. Make sure you download it. Make sure you review especially Part 2 for the NSF Award and Administration Guidelines to make sure you're doing things that are in compliance. I know nobody wants to go to jail. So the PAPG will make sure that everything is in compliance. Every time you get nervous, like, oh, we got this government money, am I doing everything right? You're doing everything right. But if you want to make sure, just refer to the PAPG to make sure you're in alignment with the guidelines that are stipulated for you. Be familiar with NSF reporting requirements. Research.gov, as you can see, I've crossed out FastLane because we're transitioning away from FastLane. So if you're more familiar with FastLane, now is a good time to learn and be friends with Research.gov. It's going to be your new friend. You'll be a place where you will go for your co-PI or PI changes if you have to make those types of changes, changes to participant costs, making sure that you still maintain that 60% cost for that F1 line in your budget. No cost extensions, you would request those in research.gov as well. And any sub-awardee types of additions, first you need to talk with your Cognizant program officer to get that approved by NSF. But that information would also go in research.gov as well as your annual reports. Reporting requirements, there are 4 different types of reports. You have your annual report, which are required, an interim report, which are nice to have, your final report, and your project outcomes report. And those 3 are required. Your annual report details the progress. You said you were going to do this. Where are you on that line? Those are due electronically during 90-day period before an award anniversary date, and overdue a 90-day in overdue within that period. We prefer you, when you get that notice, submit it early if you can. It's helpful if there is some issues with your annual report, we have the time to make sure that anything that needs to be resolved can be resolved within that window, and so you're not overdue. If your project is overdue and there's another NSF award at your institution, your overdue report could prevent that particular report from being funded. So it's helpful to be ahead of the game than behind and having to be contacted by not just us, but from folks on your campus as well. The report should last the 12 months. Your first annual report may not be a true 12 months depending on when you were funded, but you'll report from when you received your funding until that date. And then moving forward, it should be a full year. from that date to the next date. So when I was trying to remember back to when I was in your seat, I was like, did they tell us about what needs to be in the annual report? Yes, they did. And so these are the types of things that you need to make sure you're aware of, and most of them are included in your proposal. You've stated these. These are the activities that we're going to do. So you'll list those for us. These are activities we plan on doing, and these are the findings. And so making sure you keep that list and you keep updated, it's really great if you kind of prepare your annual report throughout the year so you're not stressed out when you get that notice. When you get that notice, you're like, oh, that's what they want? Copy, paste, submit. That's what we would like for you to have so you don't feel stressed because you're actually collecting this data throughout the year and you're archiving it in a safe place. The products, what was produced, any publications, any conferences, presentations, websites, anything like that. It's helpful for you to provide us those links and don't just say we created a website. Provide us the link, upload brochures, flyers, anything like that. Please, please, please upload your external evaluation report and any reports that if you have an advisory board, provide that report as well into research.gov. And make sure on any of your products that you do have the NSF grant number and the disclaimer on anything, your websites, any publications, those types of things. Make sure you give credit where credit is due as far as where the funding was to support the research. Participants in collaborating organizations, for most of these projects you've listed, I'm collaborating with this LEA and I'm collaborating with this nonprofit. Make sure that's listed. We don't want to make the assumption that you're still collaborating with them. You need to inform us each year who your collaborating partners are. What the impact is of your project. For those projects that have logic models, this will be an easy activity for you because you have the logic model and you can basically go from left to right in your reporting to us. Are there problems? What problems did you address in your evaluator's report? Did they identify some problems? Make a response to that. What are you going to do differently in the upcoming year to address those problems to make sure your project gets back on track or has even more success than you are tracking at this point? And then, of course, your plans for the upcoming year. Are there any questions as we're going through the annual report? Yes. You're welcome. And this will be archived for you as well, so you'll have access to this. I know most of us, and I'm a cell phone conference clicker too, so whatever gives you comfort, please do that. But you'll have access to this information as well. For track 4, making sure your annual report are clearly detailed. What you've learned, you are responsible for providing data and information about the research and how far you have progressed and what you've implemented, what you've learned, and how you're tracking. And we do expect some types of publications and what the results of that research has yielded. For tracks 1 through 3, there's some additional reporting, and we'll go through that a little bit later on in the presentation, more detailed, that you will have to do on a different basis that is outside of the research.gov responsibilities. For the teaching fellows and the master teaching fellows, you also have to report on your cost sharing each year. So you'll have to submit that through research.gov as well. And again, making sure you're in the loop. It's helpful to put even on your whatever calendar you use when your reporting window is, so you're aware. Your evaluator is also aware when that reporting window is, and you've had that conversation with them up front on when you expect to have the report, because you don't want to get the evaluator's report when you get the notice. You want it ahead of time so you have enough time to respond. If there's some negotiations or some questions you have from the evaluator's feedback, you have enough time to respond and address that as well. Ask early, ask often. There's just some general advice just for all PIs. We've talked about making sure you know who we are as your cognizant Noyce program officers. please, and I didn't realize how important this first sub-bullet is, but before you could put, Jennifer Ellis as the, to the 2, but in the subject line, regardless of the subject, please put the program, your award number, before you put anything else. It makes it so much easier for us. It's just much more efficient if we know what it is that you're talking about. Many of you may have multiple NSF grants, and so if you just speak in general about a grant, we have no idea what you're talking about. So it's just helpful for us that we can have that number, and then we can also do our due diligence to search and give you a more informed response versus the initial response. What is your award number? So to make sure that your time is used more effective and efficiently, please use your NSF award number in that subject line, and if you want to do it throughout your email, but in the subject line, if nothing else. If you leave a voicemail message for us, please, again, make sure you include that award number. Follow the guidelines in your solicitation. And one of the things, and I know we built in the PI mentorship piece, keep in mind that what may have been applicable for them may or may not be applicable for you. So make sure you understand the constraints of your solicitation in your year, because that's what you're bounded by, versus what they may have. So they may have some things that they could do that you can't do, and vice versa. So making sure that my mentor said this. Know your solicitation and what you're allowed to do within that. And we would make sure that you attend the Noyce Summit annually. In our negotiations, we make sure that it's in your budget. So make sure you come and you bring at least one scholar or fellow with you. We would love for them to engage in the community as well, and we have sessions that are specifically for the scholars and the fellows as well. Repayment policy, which is always a fun topic for Noyce. Working with your institution. So if you and your institution is new to Noyce or new to a Noyce type grant, if they never had a Cyber Scholars or anything like that, it's really important that you have those conversations now with your bursar's office, financial aid, whomever else are those players that would support this repayment policy. Making sure those pieces are in place now in year 1 is essential. Don't wait until the end of the grant and then say we have nothing in place. We want to make sure you have the structure and the infrastructure to support this. And we did this in the negotiations, but the actual implementation of it, we want to make sure that you feel confident that your institution can support you with this. And so the repayment of scholarships, as you know, if they don't fulfill their commitment, it becomes a loan. And so that process is a little bit different. And so making sure that those forfeited stipends and all of that's listed here as far as the 5% of the forfeit amount, making sure you understand what you can keep for the process of doing the repayment and what you have to return back to the Treasury. This is the piece that makes most of the PIs a little bit nervous, but with a proper infrastructure, you will be fine. It's not as scary as it seems, and there are other institutions who have done this for years that can also help you as well if you want to just kind of reach out to other PIs and say, this is what we're doing here. Do you think this really makes sense, and who else do I need to talk to on my campus to make this a success? But we're hoping that you never have to do this. We're hoping that this is a non-issue for your track 1, 2, or 3 grant. And repayment is not an option for your scholars because they have fulfilled their commitments. And I should note, the funds that you do recover cannot then go back and fund a new fellow or a scholar. It's unfortunate, but that's I'll say the price that we pay, but that's the policy that we have for that. So, as we're thinking about the nuts and the bolts of the implementation of the Noyce grant, there are other opportunities that we can think about for knowledge generation. And how can we help advance the field for STEM teacher preparation? And what are the other themes that emerge from your project that you can now talk with the other PIs in this room and throughout the conference on? What does that look like? And although if you have a track 1, 2, or 3 grant, you're not obligated to or required to conduct research, but we're all doing that. We're all doing research as you're leading these particular efforts. And so thinking about how we can generate knowledge, and looking at things like passion, different ways that we could grow the field. Retention is always one of the issues, and what keeps people engaged in teaching and to not have to get to the repayment process. What is it? It's not the repayment that they're scared of. It's the, what really drives them to stay in there. And really looking at the understudied. Many of you have really focused on making sure you're focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. So what does it look like? What are those different things that really have emerged from there? Knowledge generation about content, things that are persistent misconceptions, things of those nature that can help enhance the field, or who's doing this well. If there's misconceptions on this, are there any resources that we can provide to your teacher prep programs that really focus on this particular content area, because we know it's a national phenomenon that students have issues with X. And have your students or your fellows, your scholars or fellows developed a lesson plan that's just phenomenal, that really, really gets at that essence of really teaching students in a real new and an innovative way that can be shared. Statistics is a really hot topic. What can we do in this area? I know in the state of Tennessee, where I'm from, there are really a big push with math and looking at what can we do in that realm, and making sure it's not just quantitative, but looking at qualitative as well, and how we can help enhance the classroom and helping our future students as well. And more importantly, looking at some of these theoretical frameworks and how they're applied in your particular project. Self-efficacy is probably in most of your proposals. So what does that really mean? What does it mean for your scholars? What does it mean for your fellows? Pedagogical content knowledge, that's another term that we use real heavily in STEM education. And then now with the impact of COVID and all of the online learning, we're looking at TPK and the impact that has had on STEM and STEM education, and cultural competence as well. So what are the other, and are there other theoretical frameworks that have emerged that are important to the field that we need to look at across programs that you can help with that initiative? All right. We ready for some quiz time? All right, so we'll do, it's true, false. So our left hand will be true, and our right hand will be false. Okay? The Noyce Scholarship for a Track 1 or a stipend for a Track 2 funds can be used to support STEM education majors. Left for true, right for false. And it's hard for me to determine. I think it's a whole bunch of lefts. Okay, let's see. False. I did see some righties over there, so it's mostly false. So the Noyce Scholarship and stipend recipients must earn or possess a bachelor's degree in a STEM discipline. However, in addition to earning a degree in a STEM discipline, scholarship recipients may also earn a dual degree in education or a minor in education, and that's per your solicitation. All right, next question. The number of scholars or fellows that the project plans to recruit during the project may change. True or false? Left, true. Right, false. Okay. This is a trick one. So the minimum number of scholars that a project plans to recruit, don't change that. But we definitely encourage you to exceed the numbers. And if you're tracking to exceed, please definitely make sure you include that in your annual report, and then have those conversations with your cognizant program officer, so they're also aware to see what support you may need later on in your grant. But if you can exceed, that's great, but we definitely expect that you, at minimum, hit the number of scholars or fellows that you've identified in your proposal. Number 3, the number of scholars or fellows that the project plans to recruit each year may be different from the actual number recruited. So left is true, right is false. Left is true. Okay, we got a lot of trues, a few false. True. Yes. So for those who have had a track 1 before, or a track 2 or track 3, you may have a hot year. And you may initially say, I have 5, we're going to recruit 5 students every year, but you've got 8 good quality candidates year 1. We strongly encourage you to fund those 8, because year 2 may not be as hot. And so it'll balance out. Or it may be hotter, and you're one of the ones who've exceeded expectation as far as your numbers. But we encourage you to exceed, and that will help, balance out your portfolio as far as how many scholars you or fellows you recruit each for the total number of years for your grant. All right. 4, if a scholar fellow drops out of the project only needs to recruit another scholar or fellow. So left is true, right? I see some dancing of hands. Okay. False. So if a fellow or a scholar drops out, they must initiate repayment. Those are sometimes tough conversations to have, but if you have honest conversations on the front end and making sure they're fully aware of their responsibilities, it makes that conversation, more like a business transaction. This is what you said, and this is what you decided, and this is a consequence of your decision, and you will have to make payment. So. All right, 5, if the scholar or fellow does not complete the required teaching service requirement, the institution's policy regarding repayment of the scholarship should be enacted. Right, okay. Looks like a lot of trues. And some people are surprisingly happy with the true. So if a scholar or fellow defaults on the required teaching commitment, then the institution's policy on defaulting on a loan should be followed. The information on failing to complete the program or the teaching service obligation should be provided to the scholar, as I mentioned before, on the front end before they accept the financial support. The grantee's legal and financial aid office may be useful in providing the legally binding document that the recipient scholar fellow signs prior to accepting the financial support. As you know, and all of this is in your solicitation. And so again, like I said, having those conversations now on your campus to make sure you have everything in place. The legal, when I had a Noyce track 1, that the legal department was my good friend. And so we worked together to make sure what we had established was binding, and then making sure I had those conversations with my students was also very, very helpful. Noyce scholars, fellows who can't find a job in a high-need school district can satisfy requirement through teaching in any school district. And this one, please. Left for true, right for false. Okay, let's see. If it's not a high-need school district, and so this is what we're also trying to stress, the district has to be a high needs. The school, it doesn't have to be, but the district. And it's just if one school in that district is a high need school one school is a high need school within that district, then your students are safe. They can teach within that district. And so making sure that they're informed, and sometimes some of the misconception on why students will or will not accept a Noyce award is on this language here. So it's also helpful to kind of ease some of the concerns either of your scholar, fellow, and or their parents, that this is the school district versus a school. Oh, close your eyes, close your eyes. Well, I gave you one. So remaining funds in a project's annual budget will carry over to the budget for the next year, and yes, that is true. And so just making sure, and I think it's also helpful if you have funds that are carrying over, again, in your annual report, if you provide a plan on how you plan to use those funds in the upcoming years is also helpful for your program officer as well as for you to track what is the plan to spend down that grant, because we do not want you to have a balance at the end. We would prefer not to give the money back to the Treasury. So if you have a plan on how you're going to spend down that money that carries over, that's very helpful. Okay, one click. Grantees may reallocate funds or move money in the budget into different categories. True or false? Left, true. Right, false. And Mindy did a dance. So it's true, and Mindy's little dance is because there's some exceptions. So as long as the money is being spent for allowable expenditures, there's no problem with moving the money around from one category to the other. But as you know, with a Noyce grant, that's 60%, and F1, that's not something that's a negotiation. That has to maintain throughout the life of your grant. Now, some of you may have, in your proposal, gone above 60%. And so that's a different conversation with your program officer. But if you are exactly at that 60%, you've got to monitor that throughout the life of your grant to make sure that you are in compliance. All right, we just have two more of these. If the institution increases, if the tuition increases after the project begins, then the project scholarship amount can be increased. True or false? So we've got some trues, okay? Yeah. But you see, it's like true with an asterisk. So if you've got the funds to do it, then yes, we definitely want you to support your students. But that's a great way to do that. And if you make sure you can still meet your numbers that you projected. We don't want you to say, oh, the institution, the tuition increased, and we proposed 14 scholars, now we can only do 10. That's a non-conversation starter. It's, within our budget, we can do that. We want you to make sure you can still hit your goal of 14. All Noyce scholars can receive scholarship support for a maximum of 3 years. True or false? Okay, so we've got, this is another left-right. This is for your solicitation. This is a trick question too. It's true for you. It may not be true for your PIs your PI mentors that you talk to later. And it's true also with an asterisk as well. So they cannot graduate within those 3 years and earn their teaching certification. But it is allowable for them to get 3 years worth of support if this is the way in which they earn their certifications through the post-bac process as well. So they can get junior, senior, and their post-bac year. Okay? So as you know, due to scheduling conflicts, COVID, plane delays, we've had to make some adjustments with your orientation. You're going to get the bulk of everything that you need, either live here in person or in recorded presentations later on. It will be archived, and I'm sorry, in situ, this is bug here. I've been trying to ignore it, but it just got right there, and I just couldn't. I don't want to kill it, but I'll just shift it a little bit. But Kathleen Bergen is going to cover for you guys the discussion on awards management for DGA, but DGA has a very detailed presentation that they have shared that we'll share with you that will give you more information about who they are, what they do, and the role that they can play in supporting your grant. You want a handheld? Sure. Yep.
Hi there. Stay away from, I taught physics, you'd think I know that. Hi there. I don't do podiums. It's a ratio and proportion problem. So just for, how many of you are brand new, never been a PI before? Okay, congratulations. Or as one of my colleagues, John Haddock, who is not here, has coined the word congratulations. Anyway, DGA could not be with us today, so I have been with NSF since the earth was cooling, and therefore I'm going to do this part of the award. But I have to be back here amongst you in order to do this. And thank you, Jennifer. So I don't remember if Jennifer told you, she is the co-lead of the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. Thank you for all you're putting together today. And I am the lead. Okay. So as long as it's not a change in scope and work, you can move the money around on your budget, except for what part? F. You can't move F without permission. Now, you're never going to get permission on the 60%, but that's another story. But so, okay, so you can't do that. So you have to adhere to your institution's policies. So I've been at several universities personally, and sometimes an institution says you have to have permission if you move 10% of the money one way or the other. That is not an NSF policy, so you need to know your institution's policy. Overdue reports. If there's an overdue report, it'll stop any action that needs to take place for any PI or co-P on that award. So you have a colleague who is a physicist on your award, and she puts in a proposal, and NSF wants to fund it, and then they say, there's an overdue report because your report's not in, okay? So your reports have to be in on time. Does anybody remember when on time is? 90 days before your anniversary date. So if you have a start date of July 1st, it is not due on July 1st. It was due 90 days before. Okay. DGA always says spend, spend, spend. We want to make sure that you spend your funds. As Jennifer said, we don't want to have to return any of your funds to the Treasury. Okay, but I'm going to give you a caution. Sometimes you're struggling in the beginning. This is not unusual, so ask other people, the veteran PIs that you'll see later on. Sometimes you'll struggle in the first year to recruit people. Okay, so you're not spending as much on scholars, but you're still paying the project staff. And the next year, you're still paying the project staff. And eventually, you have spent all the project staff money, and you've got nothing but participant support money left. And it has to go to participant support. So pay attention when you're spending. But please do spend, and we will ask you about it when you don't. The award belongs to the institution, not you. You did all this work, and you're going to do a whole lot more work, but it belongs to the institution. So you have to follow institutional policies, and if you move to another institution, it's allowable that your award could transfer, but it's not an automatic thing because it belongs to that institution. And you told us about this pool of fabulous STEM majors that you were going to recruit from and the high-need schools, and now, so just remember, the award belongs to the institution. That's also important when you're thinking about reports being in on time. It's the institution that's also in the shortcoming. Okay. Jennifer already introduced you to your best friend, the PAPG, especially part 2, because part 1 was all about how to get an award, and now you have one, so you really want to read the second half of the book. you can put in for a no-cost extension. Now, that always feels weird in the beginning. You just got funded. And most of you got funded for 5 years. Occasionally, there's a few that decide to do a 4-year. But when you're in your 5th year, if you still have scholars that need to be supported and you still have money, then you can do a grantee no-cost extension. You submit it through research.gov, and it automatically happens. You get it. Now, let's say you're now finishing your 6th year and you still have some funds. Then you can put in for an NSF-approved no-cost extension. In that case, you want to have had a conversation with your NSF program officer, and then you also submit that through research.gov. Don't submit your project outcomes report unless you are absolutely positively done. If you have some money left and you're planning on spending it, don't submit your final report and don't submit your outcomes report, because the outcomes report triggers the closing of your grant. I know it feels so weird. You just got started and we're talking about closing. DGA, not Kathleen, although I might, can contact you for a site visit, and they can do desk visits, or sometimes they actually come to your campus and do a visit. And if they come to your campus to do a visit, it is not because there's a problem. Well, they could come because there's a problem, but they also just do random visits. And they really want to be helpful. They want to help your financial system and all that. So don't get worried about it if it happens, unless you know that there's some problems. Then you might get worried, but normally don't get worried. We do not monitor or track or complain about how often you contact us. That's true for DGA. So on your award letter, there is a grants officer's name. We're program officers. Our names are on there too. Well, just mine if you're one of my projects, Jennifer's name if you're, Tom's name if you're one of his projects, but there's a program officer name, but there's also a grants name. So if it's about the management of dollars, it's good to talk to your program officer, but you might want to also contact the grants name on that award. How many of you have already read your award letter? Not a many. Read your award letter. We should put that on our list. Okay. Next slide, please. So until a report is approved, it's still overdue. And you go, I submitted it. I submitted it at April 21st, and Kathleen still hasn't approved it. Well, send Kathleen an email and say, would you get with the bid? And Kathleen will not mind, I promise you. But that's why we want you to get them in 90 days ahead of time so we have time to deal with them. If there's a change in a PI or co-PI, and this happens because some of your colleagues are going to move to another institution, you know, and then another colleague says, yes, I want to work with you. No problem. Well, minor problem. You have to submit a request through research.gov, and you need their CV, and you need their current pending. But in addition to that, in Noyce, now this isn't true in all of NSF, but in Noyce, there are at least 2 people that must be on the PI team. Anybody remember who those 2 people are? One of them must be a STEM faculty member, an engineer, a chemist, a mathematician. And the other one must be education. Right. So if you lose if you lose your only STEM person, you need to get another STEM person. If you lose your only education person, you need to get another one, and that's fine. In any fiscal year, so if you're really a new PI, you don't even know what this drawdown thing is, but your financial office will know, your business office, not financial aid, but your business office will know. And they draw funds down throughout the year based on what you've spent. Okay, so any year that they're going to draw funds down on, so for this year, the last day is September 30th, and next year the last day will be September 30th. Anybody know why? Fiscal year starts October 1. I know we all thought New Year's was January 1, but not for the federal government. And most states it's July 1, so, go figure. Okay, what else? So, you see that ask early, ask often? That is really the DGA mantra. Those are the names, and these slides are going to be made available to you, but those are the names of the individuals in the Division of Grants and Agreements that work with the Noyce program, and they are all wonderful. So seriously, if you have a grant question, not about the program, but about the financial kind of dealings, don't hesitate to reach out to them. But my preference is that you always reach out to your program officers first. And as Jennifer said, all of our program officers couldn't be here during the conference, and that has to do with travel restrictions due to remote working. We all used to work right here. So then we all came to the meeting. Well, we don't all work right here now. So later on, you're going to meet with some of us that are not your current program officer, but you can always email your current program officer. Thank you.
Go through this next piece in record speed, because I definitely want you to kind of meet with your peers and then to meet us as well. And so this is the Noyce annual survey, and this will be narrated for you as well, but this is information that you're going to have to provide on an annual basis. It's a different cycle than, for most of you, it would be different than your annual report. And it's just more data that we're collecting on your participants that you have to track throughout the 8 years. So the joy of being a Noyce PI is that you get to be with these people for almost a lifetime, but for a good 8 years, and you're going to track them. And so this is, one of your responsibilities as well. And so the data, the cycle, this is part that may be more important if you're a screen taker picture person, is September 12th. And so if you want to be proactive, is to make sure you have all the data, sending out to your scholars and fellows, let's say August, early September, to make sure you have all the data that you need. So the input for you is very easy versus you're scrambling to say, oh gosh, where did you teach this year? And I'll just give you one quick tip before I move on to the rest of these. What I did when I created my own internal survey is I said, where do you teach? Where did you teach last year? And where are you teaching right now? So I got 2 years of data every year that I surveyed them. So if, God forbid, I couldn't find them immediately, at least I had another year of data to track them. And so the data, they'll give you, their ICF is awesome about making sure you're fully aware of when the cycle is. They'll give you a nudge email. They'll give you a phone call. We'll give you a phone call. Your provost may give you a phone call. So making sure you just stay in the email range, that's what you want. That's a sweet spot, is the email notification. Phone calls and the other knocks on your doors, you don't want that. And so the data fields will be there. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get there. What ICF is going to do is provide you with a spreadsheet so you at least know the field names. So if you're going to create your own survey, or just, even in your application for your Noyce scholarship or the Master Teaching Fellowship, you'll know what fields to make sure you're capturing so you can track them as you go. And so this is just some of the data. Again, these are going to be available for you until you'll have that. But this is just some piece of it. I'll let you take a picture. I see somebody's got their phone out. I'll go back to the track one folks for the scholarships. It's basically almost the same thing. Okay? And so year one, take a deep breath, is your baseline. So it's not as, not as intense, but again, this is a good year for you to establish your baseline with that, with making sure you have the fields that you need to capture. There's some helpful resources that are on their site once you get into there. On the left, their phone, email, they're very, very responsive. So if you have any issues with this annual survey process, make sure you call them and contact them. And there's nothing, and then they're up late, they're awesome. So make sure you use them, and this is another technical support information that you can have, but all that will be in their email that's included. So what I want for you all to do is to actually meet some folks who have been there, done that, or doing that. And so we have you kind of with the different tracks, and so you have different mentors that are here for the maybe 10 minutes or so. At least you could say hi, and they can give you maybe two tips and tricks